Hey guys, Dr. D here. Just wanted to share with you all something that's on my mind today. Something I don't talk about a whole lot except to people that are close to me. I've shared it. If you follow me for any significant amount of time, then you may be familiar with this, you may not. But this is where my mind and my heart is today. I feel like sharing and talking, and I know this for a fact based on research. It's therapeutic. My doctoral research was based on self-concealment and how hiding things affects our mental and emotional health. And so I try to be as transparent as possible, not just with other people, but with myself. And so what I want to share with you is after my parents' divorce at about 5 or 6, my mother remarried and my stepfather was an alcoholic. I remember many nights him coming home late drinking, from drinking. I remember him being sick, like with his face over the toilet bowl. He used to drink gin. And so in my mind, I said, I never touched gin. I never touched that because I didn't like the way that it made him look and the way it seemed like it made him feel. But nonetheless, at the age of 14, I took my first drink. It was Mad Dog 2020, the cheapest and most nastiest liquor or wine that I know about. I drank half a bottle of that and I was very, very sick. And so I figured I'd never drink again. I'd learned my lesson. What I didn't know, which I know now as a clinical psychologist, that if you consume alcohol or drugs before the age of 14, then that increases your risk of being addicted to drugs or alcohol, right? So in other words, the younger that you are, expose yourself, your brain, as your brain is developing, the more likely you are to become dependent to these substances. Not only that, other risk factors are if you have a family member that has an addiction, if you have economic challenges or past abuse, those things can increase the risk factors. And it's not an excuse. These are just realities, right? So nonetheless, I thought I wouldn't drink anymore. And then I remember babysitting for one of my aunts. She used to keep this wine that was in a box in her refrigerator. And I remember opening the refrigerator and being kind of curious about it. And so I'd take a little coffee cup while I was babysitting, 14, 15, 16 years old. And I'd fill it up first, just a little bit, just a little taste. And then the more time went on, that little cup became, a small amount in the cup became a full cup. And then I became an adult. And after I hadn't thought anymore about alcohol, but I became an adult. And after my freshman year of college, I no longer lived on campus. I lived out on my own and I was working full time, thought I was just living life to the fullest. And then I began to buy wine, Boone's Farms to be exact. And I drank again, that small little amount. And so then till one bottle became 2 or 3, till it became my whole refrigerator was filled with every flavor you could think of at Boone's Farm. And so I'd work 16 hours a day, come home and drink my wine and go to sleep. And I didn't realize how much it had increased my addiction. And so then I remember for a couple of years experimenting with marijuana until I realized that you couldn't keep a job if you had a dirty piss test. And so I went back to drinking, but I always felt like I could control it. I thought I was just having fun. I did not realize that I had an alcohol problem until after I'd had kids. After I had my kids, what I realized, I still was in denial, but when my son and my daughter shared with me one time after a party how they wanted to know if mommy was sick. And when we talked more about that, I realized that they had saw me drunk, but I was unaware of it because I ended up blacking out. And still I wasn't quite sure that I had a problem because I could go months and months without drinking. So over time, my kids for months and sometimes years wouldn't see me drink because I'd stop. But whenever I drank, I would drink too much. I would just overindulge. I could never stop. And at that time, I still did not understand what that meant. And so I remember having 2 years where I abstained from alcohol after my kids saw me one day so drunk that I stopped. Our car broke down, and in the middle of our car breaking down, I was outside acting a fool. I can't remember everything, but I remember I was so embarrassed. And so I pledged to my kids not to drink anymore. Well, again, me not really understanding addiction, I can't pledge to my kids or anyone that I'd never take a drink. What I can pledge to myself is to live a life of recovery. And a life of recovery looks like understanding that I do have a problem, acknowledging that I have a problem, being open and honest about what my experience is with drinking and limiting my drinking. Having people in my support system that will say to me, hey, you already had one, and me being open to receiving that. Me going back to see my therapist if I notice that my drinking increases. And so what I'm essentially sharing with you today is if you have an addiction problem, if you have a loved one that has an addiction problem, don't look at that person as less than. Don't look at that person as if, hey, you can control it. Look at that person as someone that has a challenge just like you, but your challenge is different. Look at that person as someone that you love, and if you need to set boundaries, absolutely set boundaries with them. But don't guilt them. You know, it wouldn't help. I've had family and friends that tried to guilt me, and it only made me feel worse because I guilted myself because I couldn't control my drinking. But I'm happy to say over the last 2 years, I've probably had 2 episodes where I've drank excessively. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that I went from having many episodes where I would go to work the next day and I could still taste the alcohol on my breath. That occasionally I've had drinks and I've learned to pull back from that lapse before I really relapsed and to get my life back on track. So if you have questions about addiction, if you're looking for a provider that deals with addiction, here, not only am I a therapist, but I'm someone that lives in recovery, and I'm here to support you and or your loved one if they experience anything like that. Okay, take care. Go crush your day.